Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's training webinar. We're going to talk about setting up your new Arrow account and how to get started setting up your firm's work in Arrow. So everything that we're covering today and then some is covered here on your My Arrow screen. There's a list of tasks you can do to set up your new Arrow account. You can walk through these tasks at your own pace and work on setting up your Arrow account at your own pace. Of course, you're always welcome to open your Arrow account on another screen and go along with me as I walk through setting up a new Arrow account. First, we're going to start on the setup menu with the My Company screen. Now, this is where you make some basic choices about your Arrow account. Some of these choices are only available to people who have connected their Arrow account to a QBO account. The Auto Sync Time checkbox is where you decide how you want time tracking entries that are created in Arrow to be handled in the QuickBooks Online Sync. If this box is checked, all time that is logged in Arrow will automatically be synced to your QBO account. Only time that is designated as billable, as in you're billing the customer by the hour for that task, will show up in the client drawer as a time entry. But all time will be in QBO for time-related reports and be listed on the weekly timesheets. If you leave the box unchecked, time will not sync automatically, but you can choose to manually approve groups of time entries to sync to QBO after the fact. Now, some people will leave this box unchecked while they're setting up their Arrow account and getting used to using Arrow, and then check it for time entries going forward. So the billing rate option here is where you tell Arrow what your hourly rate is. For billable activities, as in anything you're billing by the hour for, Arrow will enter an hourly rate based on what you choose in this drop-down here. You can choose to have your hourly billing rate set in 4 different ways in Arrow. If you choose item, the rate for your billable hours will be taken from your QuickBooks service items. This option is only available if your Arrow account is synced to a QBO account. If you choose customer, the rate for your billable hours will be taken from the hourly rate you set for each customer in Arrow. If you choose team member, the rate for your billable hours will be taken from the hourly rate you set for each team member in Arrow. And if you choose company, the rate for your billable hours will be taken from the hourly rate you set for your company in the default hourly rate field here. You can choose here a default Arrow type that will be auto-filled when you either create or start a new Arrow. We'll talk more about Arrow types and arrows in just a bit. Let's save our changes and continue on. So the next item on the setup menu is team members. To add a new team member to your Arrow account, click on the screen menu and choose Add Team Member. We're going to add Bob. Now the email address that you put in here is going to be the team member's login email, and it's also the email where they will receive an invitation inviting them to log into Arrow and giving them their temporary password. So make sure you don't do what I'm doing here and put in a real email address. The security level controls what parts of Arrow the team member can access and also what they can see in the customer vault. And we're going to talk more about the customer vault in just a little bit. You can find out more about security levels either by clicking this little help bubble and looking, it's suggesting some articles on how to choose a security level. And to see this in more detail, I can pop it open on the knowledge base here. So I'm going to give Bob a sort of a manager level, security level. You can enter an hourly billable rate here if you chose to have your billing rate vary by team member. And you can enter an hourly cost here. This is just a number that's used for some costing reports in Arrow. This does not sync to QBO. It is not going to affect any of your chart of accounts or anything. So you can put in whatever average weighted cost you want here. The QuickBooks entity, if you are syncing your time to QBO, each team member needs to be matched up to their employee or vendor entity in QBO so the time will sync properly. I can select or even just type to start looking for a particular team member. And obviously you want to choose the right team zone for that team member. I'm going to save and close here and we can move on. The next thing on the setup menu is accounting software types. This is where you enter the types of accounting software your firm supports. So if I choose add software type, I can put in a few of the different kinds of accounting software my clients might use and my firm supports. Let me just add one more. Okay, you get the idea. It's just a list of the, as I said, the kinds of accounting software your firm supports, and you will have a chance on the client information screen in Arrow to choose the accounting software for each client. The next item on the setup menu is arrow types. Arrow types are meant to organize the activities that your accounting firm or bookkeeping firm does during the day. Arrow types are not the activities themselves, but the types of activities. Your types are your menu of services. So a restaurant menu might have types of dishes like appetizers, salads, soups, main courses, desserts. And under each one of those types, they all have several different entries. The same with your arrow types in your firms. For example, payroll might be an arrow type for your firm. And under that menu item, you might offer several different services that would be the type of payroll. For example, processing payroll would be one of those services. Filing payroll taxes might be another one of those services. Perhaps you might even send out W-2s or another government payroll form for your client. All of those services would have the same type of payroll. Other arrow types for an accounting or bookkeeping firm might include client onboarding, accounts payable, taxes. You might divide up your tax offerings by form type. You might simply divide them up into personal taxes and business taxes. It's up to you. You might also have types for quarterly review calls or controller calls. Maybe you have arrow types for HR or professional development. You might have a catch-all type called, I'm going to call ours bookkeeping or accounting. You might also have arrow types for internal activities like sales or marketing, admin or overhead. All of those might be arrow types for your arrow account. Okay, So let's move on. I'm going to skip over procedure types and project types for a minute and go on to hats. Hats are the types of positions your staff fulfills in doing their work. Oftentimes, in a smaller firm, you and your staff wear different hats throughout the day in the work you perform. Hats are meant to enable a firm to track their time based on a function, a hat, rather than a task. So, for example, you might have a sales hat you wear. You could have a bookkeeper hat in addition to having a controller hat, and maybe you even have a CFO hat. And you might wear those same hats for multiple different services that you offer, but it allows you to watch your activities and your time in Arrow based on the hat. Hats are completely optional. A lot of firms, to be honest, don't use hats, especially they don't use hats in the beginning of setting up their Arrow account, but they are there if you want to use them. Let's briefly walk over to the admin menu and talk about what you can find there. The first item is where you manage your QuickBooks Online connection. Now, if your Arrow account is not yet connected to a QuickBooks Online account, you'll see a button here that says Connect to QuickBooks. You can also disconnect from QuickBooks here, and you can perform a sync. If you add a bunch of customers in QBO, you will need to click this Sync Now button. If you add customers or vendors, employees, items, you'll need to tell Arrow to sync to QBO to get that information into Arrow. When you add a new customer or create a new time tracking entry in Arrow, those items will sync to QBO automatically. So you only need to click this Sync Now button to bring information from QuickBooks into Arrow. Finally, on this Manage QuickBooks screen, there is a sync log. So if you think that time or customers are not syncing properly from Arrow to your QuickBooks account, you can come here and look at the sync log to see what might be a problem and look for errors. The other item on the admin menu is where you can manage your Arrow account. This is where you can see what your admin contact information is for Arrow. You can choose to update that contact information here. You can add a credit card to move your account off of its free trial and get access to the Arrow library. You can change your subscription. If you need to add more team members than your subscription size will allow, you can come here and change your subscription size. You can also cancel your Arrow subscription here. The other thing you can do here is create an API key. Now, if you want to use the Arrow Zapier integration that we have, you will need to create that API key. And for the Zapier integration, you need the account ID and the API key to integrate that. There is more information about the Arrow Zapier integration on our knowledge base, and you can find information on how to do it there. Okay, let's move on to the Manage menu. The first thing I want to talk about is companies. If you connected your Arrow account to your QuickBooks Online account, all of your QuickBooks customers will be here. If you are not going to connect your Arrow account to a QBO account, your customers can be imported for you. And you can find more information about that customer import on the knowledge base simply by looking for importing. You can also add new customers or companies here. So if I click on the screen title and choose Add Company, it will come up with a Create New Company screen. Now you'll notice that we call them companies. That's because you can have multiple types of companies in Arrow. One type is customer, but you can also have vendors, leads, or something else entirely. If you're syncing to QBO, only companies with a type of customer will be added to your QBO account. If you create a company with a type of lead, that company will be created in Arrow, and you can create activities for that lead, have information for that lead, but the lead will not be added to your QBO account until you change the type to customer. Let's take a look at an existing account here and find out some more information about what information you might find on the company screen in Arrow. The first thing you'll notice is you can add and choose what kind of accounting software they use. You can put in an account number if your firm uses account numbers. You can also put in an hourly billable rate. If you chose to have a different hourly rate for each customer on that my company screen in Arrow, this is where you would enter that hourly rate. You can also put in a monthly fixed fee. So if this client has an engagement with you and they pay you some fixed predetermined monthly amount, you can put that amount in here and track all of your time that is for that monthly fixed fee amount. Arrow has a monthly fixed fee job costing report that you can generate, for example, that uses the amount in this monthly fixed fee field here. This is also where you can enter information into the company vault. For example, you can store a username and password here. I want to point out that when you are entering new information into the vault, this row here is actually a filter row. This is not where you're going to enter information. So what I want to do is click the Add New Record button to create a new row, and then I can put in what the information is. The name is just a description of what the entry is. So I'm going to say that this is a bank login. The username is pretty self-explanatory, I think. The secured value is where you would put the password or maybe a tax ID number, anything that you put into this secured value column is going to be encrypted in your database. So it has an extra layer of security. The description is where you might put in the questions and answers that sometimes you have to create for a login. You can also put in other information that might be pertinent to this vault entry. You can also put a link in, paste a URL in here. Maybe I could paste in the URL for this bank login. I can choose a type. I'm going to put a login, and I can select a security level. So my security level here for this vault entry will control who on my team can see this particular vault entry. If they have a security level that is lower than this vault entry, then they will not be able to see this vault entry at all. Okay, I can save my changes here and move on. Obviously, there is a lot more information available for the team member screen here, and I can see more information about the options available on this screen here and by searching for information on the knowledge base. Let's move on from here to setting up your firm's work in Arrow. The first thing that I want to talk about is creating and storing procedures in Arrow. So procedures are your detailed descriptions of how to perform a particular service in Arrow. I can create a procedure guide that has as much information as I want. Print screens, I can have detailed descriptions, I can have links to other resources on the internet. And you'll notice that one of the fields on the procedure here is a type. So my procedures are my firm's knowledge capital, my detailed descriptions of how to do something. Procedure types allow me to organize those procedures. So if I were to go back to my setup menu and maybe add a couple of procedure types, I'm just going to say that I have procedures that are central to how we perform client services. And then maybe I'll have another set of procedures in my Arrow account that are for internal processes. That's it. I'm just going to create a couple. So I can give my procedure a name here. And then on this screen, I can choose a procedure type. So when I save and close this, you'll see that now that procedure type is here. And when I have a lot of procedures in here, I can either group them by my procedure types or filter for a certain procedure type. This screen here is the only place that you use procedure types. So if you want to leave your procedures with a default of other, you can do that and add your procedure types later when you're done setting up your procedures. It's up to you. Now, procedures are great to have as a reference for new hires or for when you're covering for a colleague, cross-training maybe, or maybe somebody's out on vacation and you perhaps are a little rusty or unsure on a particular process, or even for tasks that you do all the time, but only once a year, like the kinds of things that are being done right now. But they're not really intended to be used to help you keep on track when performing a task day in and day out. For that, what you want is a basic checklist. So your Arrow templates are where you can create your firm's default checklists for your client services. They're the step-by-step instructions for doing something that help your staff be more efficient and help your firm to become scalable. Your new Arrow account will come with these 4 sample templates. You can use them as is to schedule client work and get started right away, or you can edit them to make your own, or you can simply delete these templates and start over. But let's take a look at this bank rec template to talk about the different pieces of an Arrow template. First of all, there is some basic information about this particular service. Whether it's a task or an appointment or an email or something else entirely, it has an estimated duration. So how long about this should take, your budgeted amount of time for this task. You can set a days to do date. So what that means is when this template is turned into a task, it's going to have a scheduled start date. And if you fill in a number of days here, Arrow will create a due date for you as well. So perhaps I'll put in that my days to do is 7. You have 7 days from the time the eventual task shows up on your to-do list until it's due. I can choose an Arrow type here. Normally, a template is not assigned to any particular team member or client. This is just your default checklist that you're creating right now. I can also mark whether this service is usually billed by the hour or if it's usually part of a fixed fee engagement. I could choose a hat if I want to. The subject is here. I can put some notes in the description that will show up in the comments box when someone is actually doing this task. But the heart of a template is this step-by-step checklist. Each step has an order number that controls what order in the checklist the step will appear to the end user, to the person doing the work. Each step has a brief name that's required, but you can also put in a more detailed description with more information. You can add an action link. The action link is going to be a URL that's going to take the user to a particular screen or page on the internet where they can perform the action that is described in this step. So for example, I'm going to find the reconciliation screen in QBO and paste that URL here in the action link. The help link is where you could paste a URL to some knowledge base resource here, perhaps a screen in an Intuit knowledge base that talks about how to use the reconciliation screen in QBO. You can also put the SOP ID here. So the SOP ID is the ID number for a procedure guide you have created in Arrow. So if I go back to my Manage Procedures screen and I find my procedure on reconciling an account, I see that after the view here, it has a number 1. That's the ID number for this particular procedure. So I can type that number in my SOP ID column. The other thing I can do is type in a procedure number from the library. I can point to a library procedure here by typing in the number, the ID number. That we will talk more about the library in just a minute. Okay, I'm going to save my changes and actually just save and close this template. And then when I'm ready, I can easily create a one-time activity or a recurring activity directly from this template. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. So you can create and store your detailed procedures in Arrow. You can create default checklists for your firm's services. But as I've mentioned a couple of times now, Arrow also has a library available to our subscribers to use. There are templates with step-by-step instructions and procedure guides with more detailed descriptions of how to do something. Now those, as you'll see here, are only available to people who have subscribed to Arrow. If you want access to the library, you can put in your credit card. You'll have access during your free trial. But if you haven't entered your payment details, all you see is the subscribe now button. So let me flip over to another demo account and take a look at what it might look like to a paid subscription. You have the Arrow templates here, and you'll see that there are different buttons now. And you can even choose to take a look at the template to see if you want to use it. All of the step-by-step instructions are already created for you. You have links to some action that you want to take. There are procedure guides that are built in and available to look at. And then you can use these library templates to create a one-time or recurring task, or even clone the library template, make a copy of it and edit it and make it your own Arrow template. Okay, so far I've only talked about defining your services and creating Arrow templates. Now let's get down in the weeds and actually create and schedule services for a client. Now, there are two different kinds of activities a firm does during the day. One-time activities, like maybe gathering info for a new client setup, onboarding activities. Those are usually one-time activities. And recurring activities like reconciling a bank account for a particular client every month. In Arrow, one-time activities are called arrows, and recurring activities are called master arrows. I could create an arrow or a master arrow in many different ways. I could use one of my own arrow templates here on this Manage Arrow Template screen to create an arrow or a master arrow. I could use a library template to create an arrow or a master arrow. I can create an arrow, a one-time activity, without using any template at all. Just hit the quick links menu and choose to add a task or an appointment. And I can create a master arrow without any template at all, simply by going to the Manage Master Arrows screen and choosing Add Master. For our demo here today, I'm going to create an arrow and a master arrow from one of my firm's arrow templates. To create an arrow, all I need to do is scroll through or even search for the arrow template I want to use. So let's onboard a new client here today, and I'm going to set up a new client, start gathering info. So let me click the Add Arrow button here, and you'll notice that anything that was in the header information in my arrow template is going to be brought in, and I can make changes. Maybe this gathering client info for this client is going to take longer or shorter. It defaults to assign to the person who's logged in, but perhaps I want Lucy to do this. I need to choose a client for this. So let's go ahead and choose the client that we're doing this for. Maybe I can make it billable or fixed fee or neither. And then when I click that Save and Edit button, what happens is Arrow brings in the step-by-step checklist that was set up in the template. And I can make changes to it here. It's not going to change the original template, but it will customize it for this particular client. So perhaps this client doesn't have a board of directors, so I'm just going to delete that step there. Maybe I can add a step. Maybe there's something extra I need to do for this client on the setup. Perhaps I'm going to put in a due date and let the team member know that they need to get it done by a certain date. And when I click Save and Close, that task is scheduled. It's going to show up on Lucy's to-do list with that step-by-step checklist and all of the attached resources, and I can go on and do the next thing, secure in the knowledge that that task will be done the right way, the way our firm does it. Creating a master arrow is very similar. Again, I find the template I want to use. Let's schedule that bank account reconciliation. But this time I'm going to click the Add Master Arrow button. It brings in the header information, and I can make any changes I want. Obviously, I want to select a client for this, and maybe I can change whether it's billable or fixed fee, or perhaps add it to a project. And then I'm going to click the Save and Edit. What happens then is it brings in the step-by-step checklist. I can make changes. Again, it doesn't change the template. It's just going to customize it for this particular client. I could edit a step or delete one or add one. The difference in a master arrow is I need to tell Arrow how often this task is going to occur. So I click the Occurrence Options button and choose the renewal pattern. We'll go with monthly. It's going to repeat every 1 month. The start date controls when is the first time it's going to appear on someone's to-do list. So let's go ahead and select February 1st. The end date is not the due date, but this is the end of when this task is going to be occurring. I need to choose either an end date or a number of dates. So I'm just going to go with the end of our engagement, let's say, and put in that as an end date. Now this checkbox for a monthly task will control whether the task is going to occur on a certain date of every month. So I chose the start date of February 1st. If I check this box, this task will occur on the 1st of every month. If I leave it unchecked, it's going to go on the first Thursday of every month. And then all I need to do is click Insert Occurrences, and this task is scheduled for this client. Now, creating a master arrow from a template is much faster than what we've just done here because I was talking the whole time. All I need to do next is go ahead and save and close. The arrows and master arrows that you create can be organized by team member or grouped by customer or arrow type or even start date, almost anything. You can also group arrows into projects. So a project in Arrow is simply a group of arrows and maybe master arrows that you want to track together for some reason. Projects may be a one-time job like a QuickBooks review or a migration to QBO, or they could even be open-ended with no end date, just like monthly client accounting services, some reason that you want to track them together. Project types simply organize and allow you to group your projects together. So you create your project types in the setup menu under project types, and then you're able to group and sort your projects and get reports listed by project types. Project types are only applied to projects. Arrow types are applied to arrows and master arrows. Once you have all your client work set up in Arrow, you can get an overview of what's going on in your firm in a couple of different places. First of all, the Manage dashboard will give you a quick bird's eye view of what's going on in your firm right now. You can see more detailed information on that Manage Arrows screen, where you can see a list of all arrows and master arrows, the occurrences here. So you can see what is going on in the firm, what's due, what's overdue, maybe what's in progress. What is somebody working on right now? And then you can even click down into a task and see more information. What steps have been checked off, for example? Any comments that somebody has put in there would be in that task. Once everyone is logged in and working in Arrow on a regular basis, you can see more information about what's being done on the Manage Time screen. The Manage Time screen will show all of the time tracking data that has been entered so far for your firm. You can, for example, see time tracking data for your clients so far. Use this screen maybe to keep an eye on scope creep and see what's happening in your firm right now. You can also see a lot of information about your firm on the Manage Reports screen. The Arrow reports use time tracking data, Arrow status, client information to create reports for you that give you visibility into your firm's performance and profitability, efficiency, and just kind of what's happening in the firm. What did everybody do today? What's actually been completed? What's scheduled? What does everybody have on their plate? Every Arrow report can be customized. You can group it by a different requirement, maybe want to group it by due date or completion. You can also see, for example, different columns. You can filter it differently, look for different date ranges. And then all of your customized reports can be memorized. So you can run those customized reports anytime you want. You can also print them and save them as PDF if you want as well. As you work through setting up your Arrow account, there are a lot of resources available to help you. We've already clicked on this little help bubble that's in the lower left-hand corner of every screen. It's going to suggest knowledge base articles based on the screen you're on. You can ask a question in here and look for more information. During business hours, which for Arrow is 9 to 5 Pacific time, you have access to the live chat here. And then you can also access the full knowledge base from this question mark in the upper right-hand corner of every screen, where you can see all of the articles. There are hundreds of articles here, video tutorials. Also, you can access more training webinars. You can get access to the Arrow certification. So the Arrow certification is a training program that is free. It has 2 levels. There's a basic user certification that takes 2 to 3 hours. It will walk you through how to log in and do your assigned work in Arrow. There is also a Guru certification that is a deeper dive that's designed for somebody who is going to be setting up the Arrow account, managing the Arrow account, being the Arrow guru for your firm. Again, that's free. It's a separate app. You don't even have to be an Arrow user to register and log in and get certified. The other thing that's available in Arrow is this support link. On every screen in Arrow, you can click on the support link. It will take you to a screen where you can submit a ticket asking for help. You can also schedule a free one-on-one support session at any time. There is no limit to that. Okay, so that is my entire Arrow webinar today. Thank you so much for your time and attention today, and welcome to Arrow.